certainly a privilege to be able to present the beginning of this series of lessons as we're leading up to our vacation Bible school on creation. And the elders thought that it would be a good opportunity to cover some material that, since I did the lesson last November on the James Webb Space Telescope, it really sparked an interest in several areas of things in science that I thought needs to really be looked at, and an opportunity to study a little bit more about the problems that the world has with some of their answers for where things came from. And of course, as a Christian and as a scientist, I've got my master's degree in science, and it's been something that has been close to my heart for years, since I taught for 31 years and 4 more years at college level. And the number of questions that are unanswered by scientists, they just assume we have the degrees, we write the books, we write the textbooks, we have the answers, and you listen, and you pay attention, and you just we'll tell you what's right, and you accept it. Well, that doesn't quite work, because, and of course, as creationists, we have to admit and should admit readily. The writer of Hebrews in chapter 11, verse 6 tells us, without faith it's impossible to please God. So we have to have faith in His Word that He revealed to us. But the evolutionist has to have just as much faith, and this is a part of what we're going to point out in each of these 3 lessons. Tonight, the unanswered questions on the origin of the universe. The 3rd Sunday in April, I believe it's the 23rd, it will be the unanswered questions of science from the biological sciences. And then in May, it will be from the fossil evidence, from the fossil record, as that's such a big part of what the evolutionists use to support their ideas. As we begin tonight, of course, and I'll begin and finish, of course, as a Christian, as somebody who believes that what God said in His Word is true. Hebrews chapter 3, verse 4, for every house is builded by some man, but He that built all things is God. And that answers and solves the question right there by itself. When it says God built all things, that's what happened. And so I have faith in that, and we have to realize that the ideas of man are just guesswork. If I went through the number of times scientists have said, here's the facts, you don't need to wash your hands before you cut into the human body. You're right. If you've ever been to, seen them preparing on a doctor show to go into surgery, they scrub clear down to the elbows, and they scrub meticulously. It takes like 20 minutes to scrub in. And yet, scientists about 150 years ago said, not important. You don't have to wash your hands before you operate. Blood isn't important. And we could go on and on and on. The number of times that man has said, these are the facts, you don't need to listen to anything else. Well, the psalmist said in Psalms 33, verses 6 through 8, by the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of His mouth. He gathered the waters of the sea together as in heap. He layeth up the depth in storehouses. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of Him. And of course, as we look at the universe, as we look at the night sky, certainly it does make us realize that if God can create all that we can see in the skies at night, then certainly we need to stand and realize that we need to be in awe of Him. So as we go quickly through this, there's more material here. There's more material. I could preach for 6 or 7 hours. There is tons of material in this area alone. I'm going to finish by a little later than 8:30. Won't be quite that late. But as we look at some of these unanswered questions, the question is, where did everything come from? It's called, in scientific terms, the cosmic singularity. And basically the cosmic singularity says there was nothing here, and then all of a sudden it exploded. Well, wait a minute, how does nothing explode? A singularity is defined by scientists as an area that defies all physics laws. It operates outside of the area of any known laws of science. Sounds like a supernatural thing to me. And in essence, that's about what it amounts to. We'll be using quotes from the evolutionists, from the astronomers and the astrophysicists tonight to point out that they are not quite as sure about their ideas as they think. Well, when we look at this cosmic singularity, the importance to our understanding of the Big Bang as the detection of gravitational waves, a team from the Wuhan Institute of Physics and Mathematics, yeah, folks, the same Wuhan Institute. All right, this was in 2014 that they put this out. And Mathematics in China has made the first rigorous mathematical proof that the Big Bang could have spontaneously generated from nothing. Nothing exploded, and here we are. Okay, and this group is not the first ones to say that. There have been many different groups that have, one of them have used here before, a sphere of zero diameter. Now think about that. Take a sphere or something round, you make a zero diameter so it doesn't have any diameter, there's nothing there. And so nothing exploded and became everything. And that's, they have to have that. They have to have the cosmic singularity because that's how everything began. At that time, all the laws of science came into effect. And I've been reading, there's some authors that are now saying that, well, maybe because all of these laws, and I'm not going to go through all of them, there's about 8 or 9 on here, but they all had to be absolutely perfect at the time of the cosmic singularity. If any one of them was messed up, the whole thing would implode on itself. And one author is now, one scientist, astrophysicist is saying, well, in order to get it right, if you've got this many laws that have to be perfectly balanced each time in order for the universe to continue to exist, maybe the cosmic singularity or the Big Bang happened one time. Well, it didn't work that time because one of the laws was out of bounds. Well, it happened again. It annihilated itself, so it did it again. Well, it annihilated itself because of, and it may have done that millions or billions of times before finally it got it right. And here we are. And so where did all these laws come from when you're talking about something that basically is an explosion of nothing? And again, each one of these laws, and again, they're I can't explain them. They're beyond me. But each one of them applies to certain aspects of the universe, and if they're not just precisely so, then the whole thing goes out of existence. And so the question is, where did those laws come from? How did they get into that just precisely tuned condition so that the universe continues to be here? Because any one of them could destroy the whole thing. And of course, it's interesting because, as you'll see in a later slide, they're now saying that, well, maybe we need to change the universal gravitational laws because what we see when we look at the universe isn't fitting our model, isn't fitting our cosmic singularity, our Big Bang. And so they're getting a little bit antsy on things. Well, what about the origin of the laws of thermodynamics? Now, there are 3 laws of thermodynamics. I'm going to talk about 2 tonight, one right now, the second law a little bit later. The 2 laws of thermodynamics, here they are, all 3 of them. We'll just get them all up there at once. First law says energy is conserved and its form can be converted. Second law says energies flow from a state of order to a state of disorder. And the third deals with the driving force for equilibrium in nature. We want to look at the first law for just a moment. Look, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can be changed from one form to another. So basically what that says is you have energy over here, and it's on a scale, okay? Well, energy can be transformed from one form to another, all right? The scale will never change. The same amount of energy that's here will end up over here, just be in a different condition. Be in a different form, the volume of that energy will never change. So that is a known law of physics. Cannot be violated under any circumstances that scientists have ever come up with. They've never come up with any theory that will destroy the first law of thermodynamics. It's how the world operates. It's pure and simple. The only problem is, where did that law come from? Where did the matter come from? What is the origin of matter that's here? This whole bit, everything around us, even the air we breathe is matter. So we have visible matter. That's what we can see in the world around us. We can, we operate because that's what we are. We're made of matter. So we operate that way. But that doesn't fit the bill. That won't work. Because when we look at the universe, when scientists look at the universe, they realize they're missing something. Well, they're not only missing something, they're missing most of it. Because they now have to invent what's called dark matter. And dark matter is, it's a special kind of stuff, folks, as we'll see. The universe, the way it's currently thought of now, normal matter and energy, which we see and operate in the world around us, makes up 5% of the universe. Dark matter makes up 26% of the universe, and dark energy 69%. So what happens, we have about 95% of the known universe as either dark matter or dark energy. Normal matter is this little slice of the pie right there. That's the world we operate in. That's every star. That's every galaxy. That's every planet. That's everything on Earth. That's everything. Folks, is in that 5%. Well, okay. So what's this dark energy stuff? All right, dark energy. The lack of evidence for dark energy, and it says, and this is right word for word from their quote, an astrophysicist, David Spurgeon, a fudge factor added to the Big Bang model to try to explain space observations in light of the Big Bang. You know what a fudge factor is? Something that's made up. Dark energy, 69% of that disk up there, 69% of everything is a fudge factor. It's something they just made up to put in there to make their explosion work, to make it work the way they want it to. Well, dark matter is described this way. It's a hypothetical form of matter thought to account for approximately 85%, according to this author, of the matter in the universe. Dark matter is called dark, quote unquote, because it does not appear to interact with the electromagnetic field, which means it does not absorb, reflect, or emit electromagnetic radiation, that's light, folks, and is therefore difficult to detect. It's called dark because they can't see it. Literally, they cannot see dark matter. Well, how do they know it's there? Well, they believe it has to be because they have to have it to balance the universe the way they want it to balance. NASA explains it this way. Dark matter is the stuff in space that has gravity, but is unlike anything scientists have ever seen before. Together, dark matter and dark energy make up 95% of the universe. That only leaves a small 5% for all of the matter and energy we know and understand. That's NASA's explanation for it. We understand 5% of the universe. The rest of it, we can't even find it. We don't know where it is. They're still trying to locate where dark matter and dark energy hide. Well, maybe it's not really there. Okay? Hypothetical and the fudge factor. They've made it up. They've made it up in order to balance the universe and make it exist the way they think it ought to. And so dark matter, dark energy has to be explained. Well, what about the lumpiness of the universe? The lumpiness of the universe, Dave? You lost your marbles? Smoothness is what was expected from the Big Bang. Big Bang would, if you can imagine, a pond, a body of water that's perfectly still, and you drop a BB right in the middle. It's going to produce a splash, And then there's going to be concentric rings, meaning that the rings will advance out, and they'll be the same size on this side as on this side, and all the way out. That's what the Big Bang predicted. That's what they thought they would see when they put the Hubble Space Telescope into the air, when they put the James Webb Space Telescope into a higher orbit so that they could see further and more. They expected to see smoothness. Nope. They found lumpiness. All right? The universe appears to be clumpier. I like that word. Clumpier than astronomers expected. According to the largest galaxy survey to date, the extra clumps could call for a redesign of the standard model of cosmology and maybe a new understanding of how gravity works. They're going to have to throw Newton's laws of gravity out to explain the fact that the universe is clumpy. There will be huge accumulations of galaxies in one area and in a big space with nothing. Literally nothing. At least not that we can see, because we haven't seen far enough yet, I guess. But it's too lumpy, and they don't know what to do about that. How do you explain the lumpiness when it should have been a uniform, three-dimensional, from that original cosmic singularity, Big Bang? It should have spread out in a ever-increasing circle. Well, like this, the evidence for inflation. Where is the proof that the universe would expand? And you can see how the balloon here is small when you blow it up, and it continues to just get bigger proportionally, but it's evenly spaced from the center point. All right, well, the problem is the inflation of the universe is an imaginary but necessary process at the beginning of the Big Bang that was invented to try to solve other Big Bang problems or issues, including the horizon and flatness problem. Folks, when they finally started looking and seeing and collecting evidence from the universe, they expected a gradual inflation, a gradual increase, which was what you would expect if you were to throw a pebble in a pond. The rings initially would be small, and then they would get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now the model of the universe that they've come up with is this. It looks like there's virtually no inflation, no increase from there's the cosmic singularity or quantum fluctuation, they call it in this diagram. But instantly, the universe went from nothing to this wide, to almost as wide as it is now. All right? Now, they say that's been 13.8 billion years, but it did this in about a millionth of a second. In a millionth of a second from that initial nothing blowing up, it became the size that it is today. And now that we're seeing, as I mentioned in the lesson on the James Webb Space Telescope in November, the further they supposedly look back into time, they hope to see baby galaxies and baby planets and all these immature things. No, perfectly mature, perfectly formed galaxies that are just like the ones we've been observing since we've been able to observe galaxies. And so the question about the problem of the expansion of the universe has not had a successful answer today. Well, let's move on. I'm eating up real quick. Where did time come from? You know, we're a three-dimensional creature, height, width, depth, and we're bound by time. Of course, we know that time is one of the dimensions. And we know that God is multidimensional, and we don't have time to get into that tonight. But God operates outside of time. God sees time like we see that wall over there. He saw the beginning, he sees the beginning, he sees the end. He's outside of time. The question is, where did time come from originally? Well, Stephen Hawking was quoted and said this basic information. The scientists argued that when the Big Bang occurred, and I'll have trouble reading this because this is almost funny how they dance around the words. The scientists argued that when the Big Bang occurred, time began. Based on the relationship between space and time, illuminated by Einstein, we know that the two are fundamentally intertwined. so that if there is no time before the Big Bang, then there is no need for a creator to explain how the universe spontaneously came into existence. You can't get to a time before the Big Bang because, that should be because instead of became, because there was no time before the Big Bang. We have finally found something that has no cause, because there was no time for a cause to exist in it, according to Stephen Hawking. So in order, they say, well, they still don't tell us where time came from. He's just saying, well, the Big Bang happened before time. We don't need God because, well, there was no time before that. The origin of time, of course, is a construct. It's a dimension that God put into place when he first said, and the evening and the morning were the first day, and the second day, and the third day. And then he put, on day 4, he put the planets in order to mark the days and the seasons. And that's when time began. Of course, the evolutionists certainly wouldn't believe that God did it. And so they come up with whatever they can in order to manage that. Get time there somehow, because you've got to explain it. You've got to explain time, and this is their best guess. This is their best statement, and it doesn't explain a thing. Well, what about here you go, Ken. Ken's big into ET. Extraterrestrial life. Well, what about the evidence for extraterrestrial life? Why in the world is that even scientific? I've got some serious news for you. It is a major issue. It is a huge issue. And if they can't find ET, well, they're kind of sunk. They kind of mess up. All right, here's the quote. The Fermi paradox, which is what this is called, is the name given to the concept that if cosmic evolution means the Big Bang with Darwinian evolution, they have brought all life into existence here, is true, cosmic evolution is true, it would be inconceivable that other life, even advanced life, does not exist somewhere in the universe with its billions of stars, and now I think that number is trillions of stars. Now that I've got the James Webb Space Telescope up there, and even more planets. Given all of this 13.8 billion years, and given all these trillions of stars and hundreds of trillions of planets, surely, there's got to be life out there, and in maybe even advanced life. Some of you might recognize this. This is a 300-foot radio telescope at Green Bank. One of their major efforts up there, it has been since it was built, since the other one fell down, and they built this one, is to detect life, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. That the Green Bank Observatory was about this close from closing a couple years ago, until a Russian billionaire by the name of Yuri Milner donated $100 million to 3 different telescopes, one in California, one in Arizona, and one at Green Bank, to keep them open to continue. They've got to find ET. They have got to find him. Because if he's not there, that means, well, maybe the universe isn't that old. Or maybe God didn't create it out there. They've got a problem. The size of the universe suggests advanced alien civilizations, or at least evidence of them, ought to be out there. Signs in the shape of transmissions. You know, folks, the Earth produces all kinds of, every radio wave, every TV signal, every ham radio broadcast, every walkie-talkie, those radio transmissions are drifting through space right now. Can't stop them. They will, once they're broadcast, they go. All right? If there's somebody out there and got their ears on, they can hear them. That's what they expect would be coming this way. So the shape of transmission or megastructure should be obvious. Instead, we find nothing. This eerie silence, as cosmologist Paul Davies puts it, inspired physicist Enrico Fermi to ask, where are they? Where are they at? And so the question is, 13.8 billion years, and again, they're wanting to use the theory of panspermia for, we'll talk about the next, in April, where did the DNA, where did the information for our original DNA come from? Oh, it came from somewhere in the universe, where life has had a longer period of time to evolve. Well, wait a minute, we can't find any evidence of life out there, so they're barking up the wrong tree. All right, well, what about the missing antimatter? Now, I don't know about you, but about the only place I've really ever heard of antimatter was on Star Trek, where they're using an antimatter motor to power themselves through space. But the question is, where is it? What is antimatter? Energy can be transformed into matter according to the first law of thermodynamics. But when it happens, an equal amount of antimatter, basically normal matter with a reverse charge on its particles, is always produced, without exception according to laboratory evidence. So if the Big Bang is true and energy was transformed into all of the matter of the universe at the beginning, there should have been an equal amount of matter and antimatter produced. Today, the universe is virtually completely composed of regular matter. Elizabeth Gibney, writing in Nature, explains the dilemma for Big Bang believers. As far as physicists know, matter and antimatter should have been created in equal amounts in the early universe and blasted each other into oblivion. Because you put the two together, it's an explosion, and they both go out of existence. But that didn't happen. We're here. And so the question is, where is it? And part of that antimatter question, part of this unanswered question of science, is why they invented dark energy. Why they invented dark matter. Because if we have 95% of the universe that's undetectable, then surely that's part of the antimatter that we can't find. Surely that's where it's got to be. Well, the only problem is still missing. It's one of the greatest puzzles in physics. All the particles that make up matter around us, such as electrons and protons, have antimatter versions, which are nearly identical. If antimatter and matter are truly identical but mere copies of each other, they should have been produced in equal amounts in the Big Bang. Today, there's nearly no antimatter left in the universe. It appears only in some radioactive decays and in a small fraction of cosmic rays. It's not there. Antimatter is missing. And again, that goes back to that dark energy, dark matter. The reason for that. The reason that's a fudge factor, because they've got to explain the lack of antimatter, among other things. Well, let's move on. Let's go to the second law of thermodynamics quickly. Time's flying, folks. All right, second law of thermodynamics basically says energy will move from a state of orderliness, to a state of disorder. It's called entropy. It's called moving from, hot to cold. Okay? You had something you heat it up on one side, but it's got material, matter all the way through that is the same material. The heat on this end will move to that side until the whole thing is uniformly cool. It will reach the same temperature from the hot side to the cold side, given enough time. That's the second law of thermodynamics. The greatest puzzle is where all the order in the universe came from originally. Okay? You have to understand that the universe is organized right now. All of those laws of science that were listed up there, those are signs of orderliness. The thing was set in order to begin with, and now it's running down. I sometimes use, and I date myself in the time, how old I am, but I can remember wind-up mainspring clocks. You have a key on the back, and you would crank that key, set the time, and then you could hear tick, 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 tick. And inside, if you were to look inside, it had a mainspring. You tighten it up, and over a matter of 10, 12, 2 or 3 days, whatever that mainspring would hold, it would run down. The energy would come out of that. When it was wound up, that was a state of order. That was a state of organization. And then it became disorderly as time passed. So how did the cosmos get wound up? We see organization now. We see orderliness now. Question is, how did it get there? This violates the second law of thermodynamics predicts asymmetric unwinding towards disorder. Things are running down. It's exactly what creation predicts. God said, let there be. And on the sixth day, on the seventh day, he looked and everything was very good. He created orderliness and now it's running down. If you're a cosmologist who does not accept the biblical account, then you've got to explain out of the explosion of nothing, order. Tremendous order. And now they say, well, it's starting to wind down now. Well, you've got to violate the second law of thermodynamics at some point. Of course, remember, in the cosmic singularity, it's an area that defies the laws of physics. They can invent anything they want in that spot. And so they're doing some really fancy jig work. Well, what about the origin of galaxies and stars? They're there. You don't have too much trouble. Well, I was telling Chris Funkhauser back there visiting with us that in Barber County or in Randolph County, you don't get to see the stars very often because it's mostly cloudy all the time. One of the third highest cloudiness rate, I think, in the world in this area. We make our own weather. In Weston it'll be clear. Here it's cloudy. All right, and we can't always see the stars. But when we do, we know they're there. The question is, where they come from? Stars are among the most fundamental building blocks of the universe. Yet the process by which they are formed are not understood. This is not something that was written years ago. 2002 was when this was written. Folks, they have been telling us that they know exactly where stars are born. These nebulas, they don't have any clue how stars are born. Even with the James Webb Space Telescope, which allows them to see further and further back in time, they're not finding what they wanted. They're not finding what they expected, what they predicted. And so the question is, what's the origin of these stars and galaxies? And I love this one. If stars did not exist, it would be easier to prove that that is what we expect. If they weren't up there, that would be easier than to explain how they got there. And that says a whole lot. All right? So their explanation, they have not answered the question of how did they get there? How did the stars get there? How did the galaxies get there? Well, let's go one step closer, even though we can see, of course, stars in the night sky. Let's go one step closer. What about the origin of the moon? We visited there. We've had people walk on the moon. There are a couple robot, I think China has one, and maybe Russia has one on the moon right now. China's is on the back side, dark side of the moon. And there we brought back moon rocks to try to understand where did the moon come from. Well, when we get those rocks back here, that'll tell us, because we'll be able to analyze and see what they're made out of, and they're still scratching their head. It hasn't given the answer that they thought they would find. The best they can tell is the moon is 4.5 billion years old, and the earth is 4.5 billion years old, and the moon is made of material that some of it was found on the earth and some of it wasn't. But the problem is that if the earth was hit by a meteor, the moon, and it bounced off 4.5 billion years ago, we wouldn't have a moon right now. Because the moon each year is moving a little further away from the earth. All right? Its orbit, its rotation the earth is losing its hold on the moon. It's going away. And in 4.5 billion years, you can forget it. It would have been long gone. The problem, it's still there, 269,000 miles away. Biggest day, sometimes in the middle of the night. It looks like day out there because the moon is reflecting the sun's light. And so the question is, where did the moon come from, folks? And again, similar to what they say about the galaxies, it's far easier to explain why the moon shouldn't be there than to explain its existence. It would be, if it wasn't up there, man, the astrophysicists, boy, we're glad we don't have that up there. Only problem, it's up there. And now they have to explain the origin of the moon. And of course, that's different now. So these unanswered questions, among many others, and again, I've ripped through this material pretty fast, I realize that. But what's the answer to all these questions? And again, this answer isn't coming from somebody who believes in God's word, believes that God said it and it came into existence, and God can take it out of existence by not saying you'll be there. Here's what one H.J. Lipson, who is an astrophysicist from the University of Manchester in England. I think, however, that we should go further than this, which was questioning all of these questions, and admit that the only accepted explanation, and I love this, is creation. That's the only, I know that this is anathema. They hate it to physicists, as it is to me. But we must not reject the theory that we do not like if the experimental evidence supports it. And when we come right down to it, as we look at all of this evidence, and again, this was scratching the surface. I mean, I have pages and pages and slides that I had to take out because I didn't want to get through them in anywhere near the allotted time period of questions that are unanswered. Evolutionists have to, but they say, well, we know how it happened, and you believe us. Well, I think we need to be careful. We need to realize that that isn't a very good answer. That isn't a scientific answer at all. No more than, you don't need to wash your hands before you go cutting on a human body. Okay? They didn't know anything about germs. And that's the absolute fact. Matter of fact, Joseph Lister, the doctor who first said, maybe it wouldn't hurt if we washed our saws up and our knives and our tools. And maybe spray some boric acid, and maybe spray boric acid in the operating room. He was laughed out of the medical profession, literally. And yet, Listerine bears his name at killing germs, and finally, about 50 years after his death, they started coming around, oh, maybe his patients did live longer because there was something, and then they finally came across the germ theory. So, evolutionists, scientists who want to reject God will do so at their own peril. When they say something is a fact, Romans chapter 1, verse 20 says, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. And so the question is, and of course when we turn to the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, verse 16, where did the sun and moon come from? And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. There's the answer. God provided an answer. Whether mankind wants to accept it doesn't change the truth, the scientific truth. Doesn't change the accuracy and the evidence. As H.W. Lipson said, the evidence supports creation of the world. And as we see more and more information collected by the James Webb Space Telescope, the 300-foot radio dish telescope at Green Bank, the more it becomes glaringly obvious that the Creator did. Well, there's no unanswered questions with God. When God gives us, He gives us what we need, all things that pertain to life and godliness. We have what we need. Doesn't give me all the answers. Dave's got a lot of questions about, well, how did this happen? How did that happen? Which animals were, did Adam have to do? I could go on and on for the rest of my life with questions that I would like to know the answers to, but God said, Dave, you've got everything you need. All right? To get you to heaven, you'll be obedient, and that'll take care of it. Will He answer all my questions in? I don't know. Maybe I'll get to ask for all of eternity. I don't know. We don't know those kind of questions. But God planned the universe. All right? As the psalmist said, He set them in place, And there they are, and that's exactly, and now things are running down, which is exactly what the second law of thermodynamics says. Well, God also planned for our salvation. And of course, that's the most important thing that we need to think about tonight. Of course, the plan of salvation, to hear, to believe, to confess, repent, confess, and be baptized, and then to live faithfully, is something that we need to make sure. Because those questions have been answered. That question of where everything came from has been answered. God told us how He did it. He didn't tell us all the details, but He told us He did it. And that's for those that live by faith, that will be enough. We also know that His plan of salvation will get us to heaven if we will be willing to be obedient to it. It will take us to the hope of eternity with Him outside of time. Time's going to go out of existence when this material world goes out of existence. And then we're going to become timeless creatures. We're going to become timeless, well, we can't be creatures, timeless spirits. Time will end for us once this life is over. So where will you spend eternity? The question is, the song, it says, what will your answer be? That's the important thing that we need to consider tonight. What is your answer going to be when looking at the plan of salvation that God has created, that God has given us, that God made for our salvation? Are we going to take advantage or not? If you've never become a Christian, tonight's certainly the best opportunity. If you've done that and you've fallen away, certainly tonight's the opportunity to come back and to be restored to Him. Whatever your need might be this evening, we encourage you to let us know and come as we stand and sing the songs like